get cracking.
Should we do it?
Let's do it. My first
I'm so
first
excited for
reading.
you. It's going to be amazing.
So I feel on edge. Yeah.
No, you'll be fine. You got this. Got this. I can't wait to learn.
Oh, hi everyone. Welcome back. Simon here. And
Vicky, hello.
nice.
Hello. That was slick, wasn't it? It's so
Super slick. Okay. Today we are going to talk about a lady called Althea Gibson.
great name, by the way. Althea. Why aren't there more
Amazing name.
people called Althea? Great.
The only one I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds almost like Roman, like Greeky Romany, like Athena.
It
Kind of got that kind of
does.
vibe,
It's
doesn't
got
it?
proper
Yeah.
goddess vibe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So to start off with, I just want you to pick a sport, any sport you like. Maybe an Olympic one, as Paris has just begun.
Oh my gosh. You know what? I saw hockey on the telly the other day. The
Yeah.
Olympic hockey. That was cool.
So hockey. We've been to a game of hockey.
Yeah.
Who wins out of the team?
Well, the
I guess
people who get the most.
the people who get
Goals.
yeah.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
like naively, I always like to think that the best player, or the best players, rise to the top. The sport
Okay.
is like the ultimate meritocracy.
Okay.
The best person wins the medal.
Yeah.
But
Fair.
that's naive. That's a naive point of view. Yeah.
How ridiculous. What a stupid
Absolutely.
notion.
I know, it's mad, isn't it? Because natural talent happens,
Yeah.
but you have natural talent. How do you hone it? How do you afford the kit?
Yeah.
How do you train? How do you get access to these things?
Yeah.
You can be the best in the world, but not allowed to play in the same tournaments as other competitors.
Yeah.
You can't win if you can't enter. So today's subject, Althea Gibson, not only became one of the top ladies tennis players in the world in the late 1950s, rising to the number one rank, winning major tournaments, being the first Black woman to win one of the sort of big three Grand Slam tournaments.
Yeah.
But because of her background, her upbringing, where she grew up, she had to fight every single part of the way just to get access, even to the tennis courts that these were played on.
1950s. Yeah.
1950s. Yeah, well, I want to take you back to 1927.
Okay.
In South Carolina, a lady and gent called Daniel and Annie Bell Gibson. And they are
Great names.
sharecroppers.
Loving all these names, by the way. Annie Bell Gibson.
Annie
That
Bell
is such a
Gibson, yeah.
cool name. Like a deodorant or something, like a shower gel. Love that. Love that.
They
So
are
Annie Bell Gibson, what was the guy's name?
Daniel.
Daniel. Well, he let the side down.
It's a bit boring,
That's
isn't it?
fine,
Yeah,
that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, the cool names only go down one side of the family. They're what's known as sharecroppers.
Okay.
So think back to slavery in the US, technically abolished in 1865.
Okay.
This thing called sharecropping continues for decades and decades afterwards, right up 1910s, 20s, 30s, all the way through to the 70s. It only came to an end really partly because of the Great Depression, partly because of the mechanization of farming.
And what's sharecropping?
So sharecroppers, it feels to me, reading about it, like slavery by another name.
Okay.
It's where people get allocated a patch of land and they get to farm that land and they get to keep some of the crops that they
Okay.
farm from it.
Okay.
And in return, they get provided tools and accommodation and food, but the landowner can force them to sell them their crops at manipulated prices. So they maybe don't make a profit and they're in debt to the landowner for the accommodation and food that they have and the tools that they use. So it's like
What?
perpetual debt. They're still
Yeah.
fully under the control of the landowner, you know? And
Okay.
this
That
is
was going
where,
really well into the last sentence there.
wasn't
I
it?
was like, that sounds like a pretty.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like this, strictly speaking, not slavery.
Strictly
But
speaking, not
all of
slavery,
these
but a
sort of
loophole.
freedmen, it's a loophole. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's, they would be able to provide for their families,
Yeah.
not really get anything else out of it, no opportunities really to escape. And this is the environment into which Althea was born.
No, shut up.
Um,
And then she won.
Yeah.
Then she. Oh my god.
So
Okay.
August
I'm
25th.
excited. Yeah.
August 25th, 1927, Annie Bell gave birth to Althea. And this was the time of the Great Depression starting to hit in the US. And it affected these southern states, these southern farming states. It affected them before anywhere else. So they were really badly hit by this Great Depression, couldn't sell their crops for enough money, could no longer make a living off it. they had to make a decision to move somewhere. And so they moved to Harlem in New York.
Okay.
Now, at the time, Harlem was sort of the slums of Manhattan. There was
Yeah, yeah,
one
yeah.
nice area of it, Sugar Hill, which
Great
was
name.
home to sort of wealthy African Americans. But Harlem largely was a sort of poverty-stricken slum area, few opportunities for work, poor
Still
living
better than
conditions,
where they were.
still better than where they were, where
Right.
they couldn't earn anything.
Okay.
And 1930s, of course, segregation was still in full swing. This was segregated America. It would be over 20 years until segregation in schools was outlawed.
Yep.
It would be, so that was 1954. 1955 was when Rosa Parks refused to leave her seat
Yeah,
on the
right,
bus.
right,
So we're
right.
still
But
25
way
years away
before
from
that.
all of this.
Yeah,
Yeah. And even when segregation was technically outlawed, there were still mass protests about it. Thousands of people rioting on the streets because they didn't want the white kids to go to school with black kids.
Okay.
So
Well, a lot can
she's,
change in 25 years, can't it? Because if you think 25 years ago from here, we're 1999,
yeah.
like so much has happened in those
Oh, yeah.
5 years. So yeah, it
We've got
is.
mobile phones.
Well, yeah,
Plus
Facebook.
and Facebook, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're away. There's a big gap between.
Big
Okay.
gap. Yeah. Like poor surroundings, minimal rights, outrageous racism. And Althea grew up in an environment where everything was stacked against her. Like, to make it even worse, she was a woman, so she had even less chance.
Bloody hell!
Succeeding.
You
I
told me she
know.
was a woman. On top of all
I know.
that.
As
Oh
if she didn't have
God.
enough to deal with at the same time. But what she did
Yeah.
have was fight. And she
Okay.
had fight in the literal sense because her dad taught her how to box. He was
Get out.
quite,
Way.
yeah, he was quite an
Unconventional,
aggressive
isn't
man,
it?
but he taught her to box, taught her how to look after herself on the streets.
You think that? Yeah.
And
So in self-defense,
yeah,
like protect yourself. Okay.
and
Yeah.
this gave her, fight, everything that she was going through as a kid,
Mhm.
gave her fight in that sort of mental sense as well. She wanted to win.
Okay.
Whether that was street fighting or basketball or paddle tennis, she had that determination. In her own words, she always wanted to be somebody.
Yeah.
So
I'm not competitive with you.
Mm.
I'm
No.
not very competitive at all. And
No.
even at like board games and stuff, I'm always a bit like, yeah, okay, as long as we're all having a nice time.
Is everyone?
And also
It's just
competitive
important you
people
tried your
put me on
best.
edge a little bit. Yeah. So I don't
Yeah.
think we would have been friends.
I haven't the mindset for to be an athlete.
No.
Maybe not ruthless enough.
But she said, but I think that's different. So what was the quote?
She always wanted to be somebody.
Yeah, I think that's different. Being
Mhm.
competitive to wanting. I think you can want to be somebody and not be competitive because you're
Yeah.
almost. I guess you're being competitive with yourself, aren't you? If you go a bit deep, but like, I think they're like mutually exclusive, aren't they? They're like
Yeah.
very different
And like
things.
growing up where her family, they had no status, they had no rights in society. Being somebody
Of course,
gives you
yeah.
that protection, and gives
Elevated.
you that
Like
importance.
elevated status, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So she's probably competitive on top of all that.
Yeah.
Because of them. Yeah. Okay.
So in Harlem and around New York at this time, they used to have play areas where some streets in the daytime, they would close them to traffic and set out sporting apparatus for the kids to go and play.
That's
And
sweet.
to hone their talents and
Because
get
they
some
didn't have
exercise.
parks.
And
Yeah.
didn't have parks, didn't have access. So paddle tennis, which is much like normal tennis, but you play it with a solid bat rather than a stringed one. And it's
Okay.
a slightly
So
smaller
it's not
court.
table tennis.
Not table tennis, no.
Okay.
Still done on a court with a net, but it's a bit
Okay.
lower. The paddle tennis court was right outside of her house. So she
Sweet.
could walk out the door straight onto the paddle tennis court, challenge any kid that came along. And she
Yeah.
was
Excellent.
amazing at paddle tennis. I mean, she was amazing at a lot of sports. She was really good at basketball. She was very good at fighting.
Okay.
She later became really good at golf. But like paddle tennis, that was her thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And then at the age of 12, she became New York City's women's paddle tennis champion.
Nice. I love that they had
Age
a
of
paddle
12.
tennis champion. We
A
don't
paddle
have
tennis
that,
champion,
do we?
yeah.
There's no Forest of Dean paddle tennis champion. No way.
That we know
There
of.
should be. Well, that's
Yeah.
true that we know of. We'll have to invite them on.
Special guest. So seeing her talent as
Yeah.
paddle tennis champion, some of her neighbours went round and collected up funds and got together the finances to send her to pay for her membership and lessons at the Cosmopolitan Tennis Club.
Oh, this is cute.
Now,
Okay.
this Cosmopolitan Tennis Club was located in the Sugar Hill area of Harlem. So it was the
So the
one
posh
nice
bit.
part of Harlem. That was the
Got
posh
it.
bit. Home to many wealthy African Americans, still a predominantly African American neighborhood.
Mhm.
Home to them. And many of these wealthy people living there were involved in the American Tennis Association. And they had this fancy tennis club. And it was one of the few tennis clubs that she was able, now that they'd raised the finances, that she was even allowed to go and play in. Because back in these times, tennis was still like a upper class
Okay.
class
I see.
sport,
Yeah.
much like golf clubs have been up until recently. It was often men only. If it wasn't men only, it was definitely whites only. No Jews,
Okay.
no blacks, no Irish, that sort of thing was still
Right.
very predominant. So with the majority of the clubs still white only, black players weren't allowed to join or partake in tournaments. They found it difficult to train. They couldn't get coaches. There's really poor access for it.
Mm.
In 1916, a group of wealthy African-American business people and sort of members of the higher society founded the American Tennis Association, specifically to put into place the infrastructure for Black Americans, Black kids who get interested in tennis, to have access to it, and also provide a place for fans to go and see them safely, because like you couldn't even go in as a spectator to the normal places. So
You
just
don't
to
think of stuff
provide,
like that, do you?
no,
Sort
it's
of like
mad.
the immediate nuclear.
Yeah. So they formed this association to promote the game to players and fans alike. These days, it's for any race, whatever your color. But back then, it was focused on promoting it for Black players.
Yep.
And Althea trained up at the Cosmopolitan Tennis Club and switched over to tennis from paddle tennis. At first, she didn't like it. She thought it was a game for winks and just wanted to fight everyone when she lost a point. She was like, it's not like, but you
Got
know,
some anger
gradually,
issues. She's got
yeah,
some
she
anger
definitely
issues
did.
going on
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
I mean, when she was younger, she even had to go to, she went to a Catholic, not school, but sort of a refuge for
Okay.
people because her dad was so violent towards
Wow.
her. So like a really mixed relationship with her father. Yeah, he taught her how to box and
Right. Okay.
looked
So it
out for her,
wasn't all
but also
happy.
he was, no.
He was abusive.
Um,
Okay. Not cool. Yeah. Okay.
And then the
So it's
ATA,
kind of like a learned behavior then.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's what she was used to.
Yeah.
The APA ran tournaments
Okay.
because players couldn't enter tournaments held at other clubs.
Yep.
So in
Very true.
1944 and 1945, Althea won the ATA girls title. And then
Oh my
she
God.
moved
So you've
up.
got World War II happening.
Yeah.
Doing as well as the background.
it?
Bloody hell. Okay.
So probably around the same time as one of our
It was.
previous subjects was smuggling kids out of the
Irina
ghettos.
was doing, she
Yeah.
was doing her thing, and Althea was, fighting oppression in the
Yeah.
tennis world. Okay, sweet, love it, love these timelines.
1946, she moved on to the women's tournament. She lost
Okay.
her first one, but then won in 1947 and won 10 further titles back to back.
Back to back, so
10
she
years.
was like dominating. Yeah. And
Absolutely
is she
dominating.
playing? Is this just a black tournament, or is that
Just flat tournaments in the
okay?
ATA.
So it's still segregated. Okay, cool.
The word of her as an elite tennis player, as still one of the best. She was dominating so much in the ATA. The sort of word of her was getting out.
Oh,
She
okay.
caught the attention of a physician named Walter Johnson, someone who was really active in the African-American tennis community. And under his patronage, she then had access to better coaching and more prestigious tournaments. So he would get her into more tournaments around the country, pay more of her expenses. Because you've got to remember at the time, tennis is an amateur sport.
Okay.
There's no prize money.
Right.
You play in a tournament and you win the tournament and you get a trophy
It's like
or
a
a crown
pride
or
thing.
something. But it's there's no big pot of prize money. There's no sort
I don't
of fame
understand that
outside
either.
of tennis.
They're uncompetitive. Yeah. Okay. So he kind of picks her up as a prodigy.
Picks her up.
Like he
Yeah.
like mentors her. God,
Yes.
she's very she's got a lot of people on board, hasn't she? Like
She has,
she's got a lot of people fighting her corner, which is really
She's really got
like
this
that.
drive, and she's
People are seeing it.
strong, athletic woman. She's nearly 6 feet tall,
Yeah.
and she's
Wow.
got this sort of determination They can see it in her, and she's
But
got
she's
the talent
clearly
to back it up.
fit as well. Yeah, she's clearly
Yeah,
very, she's got the talent. Absolutely.
yeah. The most prestigious tennis tournament, tennis championship in the US is the US National Championships, now called the US Open. This really is where she should have been playing because she's beaten all
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
rest of
she's
the
that level.
competition. She's up there that level. And 1950, there is no explicit rule in place preventing black players from entering.
Wait.
So the tournament is open to anyone. However, to qualify for the tournament, you need to accumulate tournament points in other tournaments. And all of the other tournaments are white only. So the US Open can sort of comply with society and say, oh, well, we're not putting any restrictions in place.
Get
It's open to
out.
everyone.
Ugh.
Yeah. And it's like, you see the same thing just repeated over and over again. It reminds me of sort of tactics used to suppress voters in the US to this day around sort of voter ID and how they split up boundaries. And yeah, the rule for voter ID isn't explicitly saying stop black votes, but it is unfairly prejudicing, disadvantaging really specific members of society.
Even you spoke to Cara about this recently.
No.
Me and Cara had a whole to-do on WhatsApp because Cara, our friend, is American and she's been voting her entire life. But we were talking about the electoral system for the upcoming US election. And Cara was like, oh, actually, I don't know if I actually do vote for Trump or Harris or whoever. We did some research into it and it is so messed up, the voting system. And Cara didn't know. And Cara is a very intelligent, very,
Yeah.
contributor to society. And she just had no idea of how their electoral system works because they don't talk about it. And the fact that, like, you're right, Puerto Rico's very exclusive. There's so many communities that are excluded from having a right to say on their governing body.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely, like, Cara was absolutely shocked, like, understandably, but it's also not both under any circle. It's insane, their system.
And like, not long ago, so we've had our election here in the UK and we've got the first past the post system.
Yeah.
Which again isn't proportionate
Oh
representation.
my gosh, it's not right. Yeah.
Like Labour won. Cool. They didn't get the proportion of the votes that represents the number of MPs they actually have. And that's something that Tories have tried to cut up different sort of constituency boundaries to make it easier for them to win certain places. But in America,
I cannot believe it. If you haven't looked it up, there's a great YouTube video. It's like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe we can link it with something that is a really good explainer.
And like it comes down to these 3 or 4 battleground states, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because all the other states are locked in, so it's just these swing states they're really focusing on. And then different things that they can do to disenfranchise particular voters in those areas to swing it their way.
And no one's talking about it as well. Like, no one's saying, actually, let's change that. Bring them on, but it's so sickening.
No.
2024. So it's that bad in 2024. We're seeing it with,
74 years ago.
Yeah.
If you wanted to play in a tennis tournament, you had similar issues.
Yeah.
But the ATA lobbied really, really hard. And with the help as well of a retired champion named Alice Marble, Althea did receive an invite to the national championship. So 1950, she is the first African-American player to ever step foot on that court. She's the first person to enter that tournament. She didn't win.
Hey.
But, she held her own.
Absolutely.
She got there. She wasn't allowed to use the front door. She had to go in the back door. She wasn't allowed to eat in the canteen. She wasn't allowed to use the changing rooms. She had to turn up through the back door, play her match, and then leave immediately.
Oh
so it's like,
and imagine stepping onto that court after feeling that unwelcome.
Yeah. But she competed.
Poor kid. And she must be so young at this point.
Yeah, so she would have been 23 at this point.
Yeah.
Next few years, she won her international title. She thought about giving up and entering the Women's Army Corps. But got convinced by the army to do a tour of Asia where she went around and did exhibition matches. She played 18 tournaments abroad, 16 of which she won.
So this is like her full-time gig, right?
This is now her full-time gig, yeah. Kicked off really by the army, taking her over to Asia to do exhibition matches out there. And this was important for her, it really built her confidence and gave her a lot more experience playing competitively against more varied opponents.
Yep.
I think it was really good for her because she went over there and saw like non-white fans. So all these
Yeah.
different people from different ethnic backgrounds were coming to watch her and impressed by her and not shunning her away at every turn, every opportunity, but welcoming her. And it was really important for the spectators and the other players, the up and coming players out there to see, oh my gosh, America has actually put this woman forward
Oh,
and she's black and that she's coming out here and
smashing it. Yeah.
kicking ass. Yeah.
That's
So
just
she
great.
sort of really honed her game over these few years. And then in 1956, she finally got into and won the French Open.
Come on, that's
In the same year, so she won at the French Open and then shortly after won the doubles at the French Open as well.
nice. Nice.
And I went to Wimbledon and won in Wimbledon,
God.
the doubles
This
as
is
well.
like
So
Serena level, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah, she
What are
was
they called? Grand
dominating.
Slams, aren't they called? Yeah, yeah,
Grand
yeah.
Slams,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So as well as myriad other, like the Italian one, I think the Hungarian Championship, she won all of these tournaments across Europe. But the
Nice.
key ones being the French Open and then doubles at the French and Wimbledon. 1957, though, was, in her own words, Althea Gibson's year. That's when it really
Okay.
came together for her.
When do I get one of those?
She was seeded first for Wimbledon. And at the time, Wimbledon is still a big deal, but
It's
at the
a
time it
huge
was
deal.
considered like the pinnacle.
Prestige.
And the winner
Yeah.
in Wimbledon was the world number one.
And she won it.
And she was seeded first and she won in the final against her fellow American, Darlene Hard. After that, the same afternoon as her match, she won her match in the morning. That afternoon, she won the doubles,
Yeah, got to
partnering
say.
with the woman that she beat in the singles final.
Oh, that's nice.
But she
Yeah.
became the first black champion at Wimbledon and the first of any of the champions to be handed the trophy by the Queen.
Oh, this is so cool.
And she said shaking hands with the Queen of England was a long way from being forced to sit in the coloured section of the bus.
Damn right.
So you think how far she's come along now. And afterwards they had like a champion's dinner at the Dorchester.
Oh my God.
So people took her to get a dress and she was up there and talking to all of these lords and
But she got what she
royalty.
wanted. She wanted to be somebody, and that is it, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
she got there.
freedom.
Same year, 1957, she then won the US Open.
Okay, she's on a high. She's flying. Lovely.
She's on a high. And the
Yeah.
following year, 1958, she did the same again. She won Wimbledon and the US Open once more.
She was. She was so talented.
So she's,
Nice.
up against the best in the world at last, allowed to compete on a level playing field with them.
And smashing it as well, and holding
And
her
smashing
own
it.
and succeeding, and
Yeah.
oh my God, what a story.
I mean, as I said, the tennis was still an amateur sport, but it remained so until the Open era began in 1968. So there wasn't
Isn't
prize
that
money.
funny that it's
Yeah.
amateur? Oh, okay. Is that what amateur means? Because I was like,
Yeah. So they're not
Fame
paid
doesn't
for it.
turn up to everything. Okay.
Still a prestigious tournament, but
Prestigious,
no
but
prize
amateur.
pot.
Okay,
Yeah.
got you.
They would receive sort of meager amount just to cover some expenses, but this often wasn't enough, so it could cost them money to go to a tournament.
I bet people are paying to participate though. Like, but no, what's the word? Spectate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the
selling
players wouldn't
tickets.
see that money.
No.
So Wimbledon would have been making money out of it,
Oh,
but the players weren't getting that. There wasn't the
Sounds
prize
like
pot.
that.
She received a ticker tape parade through the streets of New York.
no. Oh, that's so cool. So like the footballers do on their double decker buses, like that.
Yeah, and she was
Sweet,
sat
sweet,
on
sweet.
sort of propped up on the back seat of the open top limo, waving to the
Oh,
crowd.
come on.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I mean, and
And
in
she
her
was-
hometown as well, New York.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And she received a claim from the mayor. She got a letter from the president. She had this short-term mega fame,
Okay.
but wasn't sustainable. She
Right.
she wasn't from a wealthy background.
Yeah,
Quite the
she's not being
opposite.
paid. Yeah.
And she wasn't getting any money for winning these tournaments. So to have a career in tennis at the time was virtually impossible. You had to have money behind you to keep playing. And
Olympians nowadays, isn't it? So many of them have to have jobs and
yeah,
yeah.
they're lucky if they can get proper sponsorship for training.
Yeah.
Be able to work hard enough. the best in the world, at the absolute height of her powers, couldn't make a living from it.
Yeah.
And they basically retired in 1959,
Okay.
a year after
This
winning
high,
the
this
sort of
super,
double
super high.
tournament. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she's retiring from tennis. But by the time the Open era came about and they did start to give prize money, she was then in her 40s, so couldn't compete with the youngsters
Of
sort of up
course.
and coming.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the part of it still being amateur is they weren't allowed endorsement deals. So she couldn't get sponsorship from brands. She couldn't be endorsed in advertising
Okay.
for anything.
There's no other avenue.
No. Despite breaking the barriers, bless you,
Yeah.
and achieving the success that she had, female athletes, black or otherwise, didn't have anywhere near these same opportunities to capitalize on their success as their male counterparts. You think from a similar era of Muhammad Ali was everywhere. And like everyone knows about him to this day. Everybody knows his name.
Iconic.
And like they were breaking down the same barriers. They were doing the same thing as her and to like similar
They're
levels of
being
success,
rewarded in a different
but they're rewarded in a different way. They get the media, they get the coverage, they get this sort of sustained fame that lasts them well beyond their career. So in the years following, she ran outreach and training programs for young athletes.
Did she?
She had a mildly successful foray into golf.
Okay.
So she became the first African-American player on the women's tour because, fighting down another.
So she just carried on with a different sport. She was like, so I'm
Carried
going to pivot and off I
sport.
go. Nice.
Yeah. She even had to go
She
at
was
singing.
so smart. Did you?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And tenor saxophone, I think. So she was
She's
a pretty
multi-talented then. Yeah.
skilled lady. Yeah. But as is so often the case, she'd achieved all of this. She'd knocked down these barriers, but wasn't necessarily the one to really reap the benefits from it, the benefits and these opportunities that she'd fought for. She was just sort of blazing the trail. At the time, tennis remained highly segregated. They'd have someone come in and win the most prestigious tournaments, but still, like she applied for membership of the All England club who runs Wimbledon, or owns that club, and thought that would be pretty easy in, considering she's just won it twice in a row. She had 5 Wimbledon trophies, 3 for doubles, 2 for singles, and she was repeatedly denied. She was never given membership or access to the club. Neither was her Jewish doubles partner. She was refused as well. So it quickly felt to her like, isn't it awful? Like whatever barriers that she felt she'd broken down, like they were being put back up behind her.
Yeah.
But they were being put.
And also, what else does she need to do? Like, what else?
There's nothing
there that she absolutely.
Yeah, she's come from like the most absolute poverty to reach the pinnacle.
You smash your sport through all these adversities anyway.
And a sport that had a lot of wealth in it, purely because of the nature of what it was.
Yeah.
It was played by these sort of upper middle classes, and
no neither. Yeah.
And it would be another 43 years until another African-American woman, Serena Williams, would win the US Open.
Wow. 43 years. Yeah, and we all know Serena, but we don't know Althea.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Like, even if it felt to her that these barriers were sort of going straight back up behind her, she had punched that initial trail through for others to follow.
That's a nice metaphor you've got going on there. Very strong.
And prove to the young athletes who were coming up behind her, it's possible. You can do it. The next person, it will be easier. Billie Jean King said after a fellow called Arthur Ashe became the first African-American man to win 10 years after Althea did. Billie Jean King said, if it hadn't been for Althea, it wouldn't have been so easy for Arthur or the ones who followed.
Great. Like, she's a smart lady, Billie Jean King. Yeah. She's a smart cookie. Yeah.
Respect. Yeah. So, as always seems to be the case, it's not that one person can break these barriers down and that's that.
Continue.
But it is the repeated thing, and every time it gets a bit easier.
Yeah, okay.
Like succeeding despite a society and the institutions that were set up to ensure her failing. She blazed a trail which others have followed since. And over the years, she's been inducted into many halls of fame, received medals and recognition for her achievements. And in 2019, a statue of her was unveiled at the home of the US Open, Flushing Meadows. And it's
Hey,
only the
that's cool.
second statue that they've ever put up in honor of a
Good.
champ.
Great.
And the sculpture was by an artist called Goulder. He said, Althea reoriented the world and changed our perceptions of what is possible. We're still struggling, but she broke the ground. In her retirement speech, she said, I hope that I have accomplished just one thing, that I have been a credit to tennis and to my country.
Oh my God.
By all measures, reads the inscription on her Newark statue. Althea Gibson certainly attained that goal.
Oh, I feel a bit emotional. Oh my God. Yeah.
There we are.
She did achieve it. The thing. She
That's
didn't
something.
just achieve it, she went beyond, didn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So impressed. Well done. Well done. Did you enjoy that? I
Loved it.
enjoyed
Loved
that.
researching it all.
What a lady. What a lady.
And I learned loads more about segregation and
Now,
the southern
hopefully other
states in the
people
30s
know
and
about
sharecroppers.
Althea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully other people know Althea now.
The main source for all of this is her book.
Is it? Okay, great.
Which is called
Wrote a
I
book,
Always Wanted to Be Somebody. Strong read.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing that. That's amazing.
Remember to like, rate, subscribe, check out our socials.
We are doing a shout out if you've got any suggested subjects for us, or if you've just got a really cool story to tell about any woman at any time. You know, they don't have to have changed history, quote unquote, just someone who's pretty kick-ass. Please share, and then we'll do a listener episode at some point. That'll be really cool.
Great. So, well, thanks everyone.
Thanks for listening.